morning, he sent him to get some salt. When the apprentice returned, the master told him to mix a handful of salt in a glass of water and then drink it. How does it taste? The master asked. Bitter, explained the apprentice. The master then asked the young man to take the same amount of salt and put it in a nearby lake. The two walked in silence down to the lake. Once they arrived, the apprentice swirled his handful of salt into the lake water. The old man then said, "Now, drink from the lake." As the water dripped down the young man's chin, the master then asked, "How does it taste?" "Fresh," exclaimed the young apprentice. The master asked, "Do you taste the salt?" "No," the young man said. At this, the master sat down beside the serious young man and explained softly, "The pain of life is pure salt, no more, no less. The amount of pain in life remains exactly the same. However, the amount of bitterness we taste depends on the container we put the pain in. So when you are in pain and struggling, the only thing you can do is to enlarge your container. Stop being a glass, become a lake instead." Today, I want to talk to you about struggle. I want to talk about what it means having the choice of either being a glass or being a lake when pain and struggle occur. I want to talk about how we are supposed to handle all that life throws at us. So let's get started. A long time ago, there was an Israelite couple who couldn't conceive. Well, one special day, the Lord appeared before the wife. He told her that she was going to have a son and that he would be a very special young man. He gave her guidelines for her pregnancy, telling her that her son would begin the work of saving Israel from the Philistines. The Lord told her that her son would be a Nazirite. Now, Nazirites had special rules to follow. A Nazirite was an Israelite consecrated to the service of God, under vows to abstain from alcohol, to let their hair grow, and to avoid defilement by contact with corpses. Can you imagine her joy? After not being able to have children, she was now not only going to have a child, but he was going to be very special. He had a special job to do for God. I'm sure she was ecstatic. Well, her son was born, and he was named Samson. Samson is a strong, good name, and he had the looks to match. The Bible says several times how strong he was. So I like to picture that he had these huge muscles. Like maybe he looked like the wrestler/actor Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Muscles just popping out of his shirt. Huge, strong, magnificent. If he was in today's world, I feel like he'd be one of those guys always at the gym, lifting huge weights while admiring his guns in the mirror. And remember, he was never supposed to cut his hair. So I like to think that he had this long, flowing hair like Fabio, the kind of guy who looks like he should be on the cover of a romance novel. In my imagination, he's quite magnificent to look at. Well, Samson's all grown up now, and so we begin our story. Remember, he was supposed to follow the rules to be a Nazirite, that God blessed him with his strength so that he was supposed to help conquer the Philistines. Well, he did a few things that went against what he was supposed to do. But today, my focus is on what I think was one of his biggest struggles: women. In chapter 14 of Judges, Samson goes down to the city of Timnah and meets a woman, a Philistine woman. Now remember, he is an Israelite, and the purpose of this amazing strength God gifted him with was to bring down the Philistines, not to marry them. Well, he meets her. I'm assuming he strikes up a conversation with her, and he decides that he likes her enough to want to marry her. He goes and tells his parents. Now, usually, when your kid wants to get married, you're super excited, overjoyed even, supportive. But Samson's parents, not so much, because he was marrying outside of his people, and that wasn't quite exciting for them. They said, "Come on, Samson, surely there's a woman from Israel you can marry. Do you really have to marry a woman from the Philistines? They aren't even circumcised." But Samson wouldn't hear it. And in chapter 14, verse 3, he says, "Get that woman for me. She is the one I want." His mind was made up. He wouldn't be persuaded otherwise. He wasn't focused on God's great plan for him. He had been taught how he was supposed to be, that he was gifted with his amazing strength to conquer those people, not to marry into them. But he didn't care about that right now. He marries her, making her his wife. Well, some stuff went down, and his wife was actually given to his best man from his wedding. Can you imagine that? He gets married, a fight happens, stuff goes down, and she is given away to another man. Afterwards, she ends up getting burned to death by her own people to avenge Samson. They end up going back and forth with each other. Samson versus the Philistines, one thing after the other. In chapter 16, Samson goes to Gaza. He sees a prostitute there and decides to spend the night with her. Well, someone tells the people of Gaza that the infamous, strong, long-haired Israelite is in town. So they go and try to overtake him. Well, he ends up getting out of that situation as well. Do you see a pattern here? Samson definitely has a thing for the ladies. He doesn't seem focused on God's goals for him. He doesn't seem to prioritize being a Nazirite. His own lust seemed like the top priority in his life to me. After the prostitute situation that he escaped from, he meets yet another woman. In the verse 4 of chapter 16, Samson meets and falls in love with a woman from the valley of Sorek, a woman named Delilah. Now, the Bible never actually says what kind of woman Delilah is, where she's from, who her people are, so we don't know for sure. But the Bible says that Samson loved her. In verse 5, some kings of the Philistines go to her. Remember, they hate Samson. He has killed many of Philistine. They really hated him. They even killed his wife, one of their own, just to spite him. So they go to this Delilah. They have a little conversation with her. They said, okay, listen. Try to find out just what it is that makes Samson so strong. Try and trick him into telling you. We want to find out how we can capture him and tie him up. We want to be able to control him. If you can do this, each one of us will give you 28 pounds of silver. Now, if she was a good woman, if she loved Samson, she'd tell him, get out of there. She would tell him they were crazy, that she would never betray him like that. But she didn't. No, instead she goes to him, probably trying to butter him up. Samson, tell me why you're so strong. How can someone tie you up and take control of you? Now, you think he might question why she wants to know this? Like, it's kind of a weird thing to ask. What's going on, Delilah? But he doesn't ask any of that. Instead, he answers her. But not with the truth. He may not have questioned why she was asking this, but he did not tell her the true answer, that God blessed him, that his hair was special. He tells her, someone would have to tie me up. He would have to use 7 new bowstrings that have not been dried. If he did that, I would be just as weak as any other man. I could just imagine Delilah hearing this and getting excited, thinking about all that money she was going to get, how she was going to spend it. She tells this news to the kings of the Philistines. So they bring her 7 new bowstrings that have not been dried. Some men go and hide in another room while she ties them up with the bowstrings. And then she says, Samson, the Philistines are about to capture you. Samson easily breaks right through the strings, becoming free. So the Philistines do not find out the secret to his strength that day. Delilah is upset. Probably starts getting a little bit loud. She exclaims, you have made me look foolish. You lied to me. Please tell me, how can someone tie you up? Once again, he doesn't question her. He doesn't think it's a bit odd that she wants to know this, or that she apparently already tried to do it. He doesn't ask who she looks foolish to. Again, he just answers her. If they tied me up with new ropes that have never been used before, then I will be as weak as any other man. So again, some men come and hide in another room. Delilah, equipped with the new ropes, ties Samson up. And again she calls out to him, Samson, the Philistines are about to capture you. But just like before, he broke right through the new ropes, just as easily as if they were threads. As you can imagine, Delilah does not take this lightly. She repeats that he has lied to her and made her look foolish. She once again demands that he tell her how someone can tie him up. Okay, so he catches on, right? He has to start to wonder why she wants to know this and why he keeps getting tied up. Why she keeps saying that same line to him, the one about getting captured. But once again, Samson does not seem to wise up to her. She really seems to have some kind of power over him, the power of lust. But not so much that he tells her the truth, because he once again tells her a lie about how to be captured. This time he says, use my loom. Weave the 7 braids of my hair into the cloth. Tighten it with a pen. And then I will become as weak as any other man. Does she give up? Does she decide that she loves this Israelite man more than all those pounds of silver? No, she does not. This woman is on a mission. When Samson falls asleep, Delilah weaves the 7 braids of his hair into the cloth. And then she fastened it with a pen. And again she calls out to him, Samson, the Philistines are about to capture you. Samson woke up, pulling up the pin and loom with the cloth, breaking free yet again. At this point, I am quite sure that Delilah is beyond frustrated. Here is this man claiming to love her, this strong, beautiful man who has a secret, and he won't share it with her, the woman he has chosen to be with. You'd think he'd get tired of her asking, that he'd get tired of her saying he was about to get captured, that he would focus on being a Nazirite and serving the Lord. But he doesn't. I feel personally like it was a struggle. Like maybe he started to get a bit annoyed with the questions. Maybe a tiny part of him wondered why she wanted to know so badly, but he doesn't walk away. He chooses this woman over the life that he was chosen for. He picks lust over listening to the Lord. Delilah starts demanding to know the truth. She starts a barrage of questions once again. How can you say that you love me? You don't even trust me. This is the 3rd time that you have made me look foolish. You still have not told me the secret to your strength. She kept bothering him day after day, the same questions. The Bible says he became so tired of it that he felt like he was going to die. A bit dramatic, but women do have a way with the questions. So he finally breaks down and tells her everything. He tells her he has never cut his hair, not even a little trim for the ends, that he was set apart to God as a Nazirite ever since he was born, that if someone did shave his head, he would lose all his strength, and he would become as weak as any other man. Delilah was paying close attention. She was really intent on what he was saying, and she saw that he was sincere. She was probably so excited. She was finally going to get all that silver. So she sent yet another message to the kings of the Philistines. Her message said to them to come back one more time, that he had finally told her everything. So the kings came back to Samson's woman. They brought her all her precious silver that had been promised. Samson fell asleep on Delilah's lap, possibly thinking of how nice it was to have finally shared his deepest secret with the woman he loves. After he was fast asleep, she called a man to come in and shave off his 7 braids. As his braids were being shaved off, he began to weaken. All his strength was leaving him. She again called out to him, Samson, the Philistines are about to capture you. He woke up not knowing anything was different. He's like, I'll get loose easy. I'll just shake myself free like before. What he didn't know was that the Lord had left him. The Philistines then captured Samson and gouged out his eyes, a terrible punishment. And they took him down to Gaza, the town where he had stayed with the prostitute. They put him in prison and put chains on him. So here he is, no hair, no strength, no eyesight, and no woman. The woman that he had loved had betrayed him. He lost it all because he had lost focus on what God's goals were for him. He had given into lust instead. If he had just stuck with God's plan, this never would have happened. If he had not told her his secret, this never would have happened. Better yet, if he was not so focused on being with women, this never would have happened. But here he is, blind, weak, and in prison. Well, as Samson was probably commiserating, the kings of the Philistines were ecstatic. They were so ecstatic that they had finally defeated this Israelite who had killed so many of their people that they decided to celebrate. They offered a sacrifice to their god Dagon. They praised their god, saying, "This man destroyed our country. He killed many of us, but our God helped us capture our enemy." They were in great spirits. They had finally captured this strong beast of a man. So they threw a party. The temple was filled with people celebrating the capture of Samson. Men and women alike, all the kings of the Philistines. The Bible says there was about 3,000 people there, in and on top of the temple, celebrating, having a great time at Samson's misery. They decided it wasn't enough that he had been captured and blinded. They said, "Bring Samson out to perform for us." So out of the prison he came. They made him stand between the pillars of the temple. A servant was holding his hand, guiding him to the pillars. He said to the servant, "Let me feel the pillars that hold the temple. I want to lean against them." So the servant guided his hands between the pillars. All those Philistines were there, probably making fun of him, calling him names, laughing at the loss of his strength and eyesight. As all this was going on, Samson began to pray to the Lord. He said, "Lord God, remember me. God, give me my strength one more time. Let me pay back those Philistines for taking away my eyes." Samson didn't just pray, he believed in his prayer. Even though he had went against God in the past, he had faith that God would hear him and grant him the strength he needed. Chapter 16, verse 29 describes what happened next. It says that Samson grabbed a hold of these two pillars that supported the whole temple. He braced himself, his right hand on one pillar, his left hand on the other pillar. Samson again spoke to the Lord. He said, "Let me die with these Philistines." And then he pushed. He pushed against those pillars as hard as he could, and down fell the temple, falling on the kings and all the people in it, including Samson himself. Samson killed more Philistines as he died than the whole time he was alive. After his death, his family went and got his body, burying him in the tomb of his father. And that is the story of the strongest man in the Bible. You could look at this story in different ways, coming away with a different perspective. I look at this story and I see Samson struggle with several things. He struggled with listening to God. He struggled with the rules he was supposed to adhere to. He struggled with the gift he was giving, and he struggled with lust. He had a pretty great life. The Lord had blessed him and given him this amazing strength. He was going places. He knew how special he was, but he lost focus. His focus was more on the ladies. I feel like maybe this was one of his biggest struggles. Like, he wanted to be good. He wanted to do right by the Lord. But then he'd get around the ladies and lose his focus. Like, he forgot how he was supposed to act. And he did one of the biggest things he was never supposed to do. He told one of those ladies his biggest secret. And that was the beginning of the end for Samson. It happens. People struggle. Everyone has struggled in their life. He gave in to his struggle. He allowed his struggle to be bigger than God. But in the end, he righted his wrong. He put his faith back in God. He prayed, having the faith that God would once again give him his strength one last time for one final act against the Philistines. C.S. Lewis said, "You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending." Samson couldn't go back and not have been with the wrong woman. He couldn't go back in time and not have told her his top secret. But he could change the ending. He could turn to the Lord. He could make it right with God, pray to him, believing that he would give him the strength one last time. And the Lord helped him conquer his struggle, even if it was at the cost of his life. That is the story of Samson. A daughter was complaining to her father one day. Her life was miserable, and she didn't know how she was going to make it. She said she was tired of fighting and struggling all the time. It seemed just as one problem was solved, another one soon followed. Her father, a chef, took her to the kitchen. He filled 3 pots with water and placed each one on a high fire. Once the pots began to boil, he placed potatoes in one pot, eggs in the second pot, and ground coffee beans in the third. He let them sit and boil without saying a word to his daughter. She moaned and waited impatiently, wondering how food was going to solve her problems. After 20 minutes, he turned off the burners. He took the potatoes out of the pot and placed them in a bowl. He took the eggs out and placed them in a bowl. He then ladled the coffee out and placed it in a cup. Turning to her, he asked, "What do you see?" Potatoes, eggs, and coffee," she quickly replied. "Look closer," he said. "Touch the potatoes." She did, and noted that they were soft. He then asked her to take an egg and break it. After pulling off the shell, she observed the hard-boiled egg. Finally, he asked her to sip the coffee. Its rich aroma brought a smile to her face. "Dad, what does this mean?" she asked. He explained to her that the potatoes, eggs, and coffee beans had each faced the same adversity, the boiling water. However, each one reacted differently. The potato went in strong, hard, and unrelenting, but in boiling water it became soft and weak. The egg was fragile with a thin outer shell protecting its liquid interior until it was put in the boiling water. Then the inside of the egg became hard. However, the ground coffee beans were unique. After they were exposed to the boiling water, they changed the water and created something new. "Which one are you?" he asked his daughter. "When adversity knocks on your door, how do you respond? Are you a potato, an egg, or a coffee bean?" Whenever I'm writing a sermon, I always pray, then sit back and wait. I usually have a couple of subjects in mind, and I just have to wait to see which one God leads me to write about. For a few months now, I have felt compelled to speak about struggle. I felt God was leading me to preach on this subject. I also felt compelled to open up about my own struggles. Now, I always want to be careful when I'm up here to make sure that what I talk about is God-based and not have the attention focused on myself. I never want to make it seem like it's the Crissy show. And honestly, my struggle is personal and embarrassing. I've opened up a little bit about it in the past, but I don't usually go into too much detail. But I felt like God was leading me for whatever reason to share with you today what I struggle with. So please bear with me. For years now, probably since my late teens if I'm being honest with myself, I've struggled with depression. It was there but manageable. It wasn't a huge life-altering thing for me, more just an annoyance. Then about 6 years ago, I went through a divorce, and the depression became much more severe, almost debilitating. It lasted a year. And then I thought I had conquered it. I thought the battle was over. Little did I know, it was just beginning. For 6 years now, my depression has become a huge, unwanted part of my life. Sometimes I think I have it under control. And then about a month down the road, it'll again become overwhelming. It's like a roller coaster, like the worst roller coaster I've ever been on, the kind you can't get off of. There is no explaining why I have it or why I cannot get rid of it. Some days I can control it. Other days I cannot help but sink into the dark abyss that defines it. I sometimes cannot even get off the couch. My sadness just overwhelms me. I have no desire for life during these times. I just sleep my days away, sleep and cry. Sometimes I'm lucky and I'll just be for a day or two. Sometimes I'm not so lucky and it will last a month, sometimes more. And as if depression wasn't enough, I also have anxiety, like crazy, mood-altering anxiety. It has really seemed to get worse over the last 2 years. I can be out having a great time, perfectly normal. And then all of a sudden the anxiety will hit and I will become a different person. I shut down. I can't deal with life stuff when the anxiety hits. My head doesn't want to shut off and my mind is always racing. I seem to have like a million different thoughts in my head during one of these episodes. Just like the depression, it can last a little bit or for long periods of time. When my anxiety is bad, I can't sleep at night. My head just is not shut off. The thoughts just race and race. I try, I cry, and I pray. I try to rock myself to sleep. I try to listen to soothing music. My husband tries to rock me to sleep. I try to pray myself to sleep. My head just does not shut off. Nothing seems to work. And I often go days without sleeping much, which makes everything worse. This illness has affected every aspect of my life, especially my marriage. It's not something I like to be too open about for several different reasons. Number one, I feel embarrassed. I am a control freak, ask my husband, and this is something in my life that I have absolutely no control over. Number two, I feel weak. I feel strong in so many other aspects of my life, but when it comes to mental illness, I feel like a weak imposter. I'm usually a cup half full type person. I'm usually so happy, appreciating the little things in life. I have so much to live for. I once opened up to a family member about my depression, and he was like, why? You have a great life. You should be happy. Stop being depressed, just be happy. And I thought to myself, if only it was that easy. And I thought, wait, is it that easy? Number 3, I feel like a bad Christian. Several times in the past, when I have opened up about my issues, I've been told to just pray about it, that God will take it away. But the thing is, I do pray, and pray, and pray, and pray. I do believe in God. I do believe that God can take away your pain, your struggle. But yet I still struggle with the depression and anxiety. So then my thoughts are, well, maybe I'm just a bad person. Maybe my faith just isn't big enough. Maybe I'm just not Christian enough. These are the thoughts that race through my head. I've struggled with this for years. And then finally, about 10 months ago, I felt something come over me. I felt like a voice was telling me to look into therapy. So I started looking online for a holistic therapist that would accept my insurance. And again, I felt a voice leading me to this certain therapist. I felt like a presence saying, she's the one. So I went to her one time and fell in love. That was about 10 months ago. I see her once a week faithfully. And I'm finally coming to terms with my struggle. I truly feel like it was God who led me to therapy, and that God chose her for me. We openly talk about God, and she's able to help me try and cope with this illness. She gives me assignments. I've learned different ways to cope when it hits me. And I have finally come to terms with accepting that I may have this problem for the rest of my life here on this earth. Now, that doesn't mean that I've given up hope. It doesn't mean that I don't believe that God can't cure me, because I still believe. It just means that I finally come to terms with God doesn't always answer prayer the way I want him to. He hasn't cured me of this illness, even though it takes over my life. That doesn't mean that I'm praying wrong, and it doesn't mean that he's ignoring me. But for once, I feel like I'm finally open to the fact that he answered my prayers in a different way. He may not have cured me of it, but he did send me a very supportive husband who tries his hardest to be patient with me. He provided me with a loving family who supports me getting better. And he may not have taken away my ailment yet, but he provided me with ways to cope with it. God got me to go to therapy. He answered my prayers in other ways. It's still a daily battle. But I finally have a different attitude, a different perspective. I'm slowly becoming okay with how I am. I'm starting to see hope, even on my darkest days. He might not have answered my prayer the way I wanted him to by taking it away, but he did answer my prayer. He made sure I knew that I was not alone and not without hope. Just because you're Christian, just because you pray and have faith, it doesn't mean you're always going to have a cheery life. It doesn't mean you won't have struggles, that you won't have pain, because you will. Whatever your struggle is, whatever you're battling right now, he might take it away and he might not. It isn't because you're praying wrong. It isn't because you don't have faith. We live in a sinful world. We're going to have battles. We're going to have struggles. Whether it's a physical illness, mental illness, financial problems, the death of a loved one, or maybe you're like Samson, struggling with lust. Whatever you're going through, whatever your struggle is, don't give up hope if it doesn't go away. Don't be discouraged. Keep an open mind instead, and make sure you're listening in case he is showing you a different way. He may let you struggle, but he never allows you to struggle alone. Amen. The hope I have learned to turn to comes from Revelation 21:4. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, sadness, crying, or pain. All the old ways are gone. God may never take away my depression. He may never take away my anxiety. I may battle these the rest of my days here on this earth. But I know that someday he will wipe away every single tear that I cried. One day I will no longer battle this. I will no longer struggle. And even if that time never comes while I'm here on this earth, I'm learning that that's okay. Because one amazing day it will happen. And there will be no more sadness or pain. That is God's promise to me. So that is what I choose to focus on today. I have the choice to be a glass or to be a lake. I can be bitter or I can have hope. I choose to be a lake. I choose to be a coffee bean. Even though my struggle may get the best of me some days, because it does, it can never take away my hope. God is bigger than my struggle. Romans 5:3-5 says, more than that, we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. Today I choose to rejoice in my suffering, as weird as that may sound. Every day that I beat it, I feel just a little bit stronger. And every time I'm reminded that it was God who got me this far. There is hope in pain. There is beauty in struggle. My mom would often read this story to me growing up, and I always loved it. I especially feel it applies to this message today. One night a man had a dream. He dreamed he was walking along the beach with the Lord. Across the sky flashed scenes from his life. For each scene, he noticed 2 sets of footprints in the sand. One belonged to him, and the other to the Lord. When the last scene of his life flashed before him, he looked back at the footprints in the sand. He noticed that many times along the path of his life, there was only one set of footprints. He also noticed that it happened at the very lowest and saddest times in his life. This really bothered him, and he questioned the Lord about it. Lord, you said that once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I have noticed that during the most troublesome times in my life, there was only one set of footprints. I don't understand why, when I needed you most, you would leave me. The Lord replied, my precious, precious child, I love you and would never leave you. During your times of trial and suffering, when you see only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. Amen. On our darkest days, we can't always see that he's carrying us. He never leaves us, even though we may feel alone. Yes, you will struggle. Yes, you will fall. Yes, you will feel pain because of the world we live in. But the one thing that I hope you never feel is alone. Psalms 34:19. People who do what is right may have many problems, but the Lord will solve them all. Isaiah 41:13, I am the Lord your God. I am holding your right hand, and I will tell you, don't be afraid. I will help you. The Bible is full of people who had struggles. It's full of people who went through some kind of battle, like Samson. It's full of sad moments. But the Bible is also full of overcoming those sad moments, full of hope, full of God's promises. Whatever we struggle with here on this earth, there's going to come a day where we no longer struggle. That is God's promise to us. His promise of hope is bigger than our struggle ever can be. Helen Keller once said, the struggle of life is one of the greatest blessings. It makes us patient, sensitive, and godlike. It teaches us that although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of overcoming it. Now that is a very positive way to look at life. Unfortunately, it isn't always easy to have this attitude. It isn't always easy to see a blessing in our pain. It isn't always easy to see an end to it. Sometimes we don't even think that we can get through another day. On our darkest days, it is hard to remember that God has got this, that God is bigger than all of this. Even though it's hard, even though it can get unbearable and you feel so weak, even when you feel like giving up, try to remember God's promise to us back in Revelation. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, no more sadness, no more crying, no more pain. Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things through Christ because he gives me the strength. Allow God to give you that strength. When you feel like you just cannot take it anymore, when you feel like giving up, allow God to carry you through the struggles, to carry you through that pain. God says, come to me, all you who are tired and have heavy loads. I will give you rest. Are you tired today? Is your load so heavy that you think you just cannot carry it any longer? Come to God today. Allow him to help you, to hold you through that pain. Accept God's gift today. Accept the rest he is offering. He will wipe away your tears. That is his promise. And God always keeps his promises. Not always in the time that we want, not always in the way that we want, but he does keep them. That is the the one thing that always remains true in this dark, cold world. That is the one thing to remember during our darkest struggles. Whether it's today or whether it's at the very end of our days, he will take it away. I'm going to close today's message with a poem I found online. The title is Don't You Quit. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns, and many a fellow turns about when he might have won had he stuck it out. Don't give up though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Often the goal is nearer than it seems to a faint and faltering man. Often the struggler has given up when he might have captured the victor's cup, and he learned too late when the night came down how close he was to the golden crown. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint in the clouds of doubt, and you never can tell how close you are. It might be near when it seems so far. So stick to the fight when your heart is hit. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit. I wish you all a happy and beautiful Sabbath day. And remember, don't let your struggle define who you are. Just like that saying goes, when life gets too hard to stand, then kneel. God does have this. Thank you.